And good morning. It is a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. It's been a little while. It's good to be back. And look at this guy.
Right? Who is this guy?
Look at him. You may remember Zack Goodman, who
They probably don't.
He was part of the bat around for a long time. Yeah, how long did you do the bat around?
Almost 4 years.
I was going to say it was a while,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it was.
You had a good run.
Yeah, it was a great run.
Zach would come in and fill in with us as well from time to time, and then he went on to far more significant things. As he was,
I don't know about that.
He's been working on Capitol Hill, and when Griffin told me he was going to be out, I was like, well, call Zach and at least find out if he'd be interested in coming and doing it. And I was surprised to find out that Zach wanted to come in and hang out on it.
Why
Tuesday.
not?
So that's
Why
very
not?
cool. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. Griffin will be back this week, although, if he needs to stay away. Kidding. Love him. A lot to do on the program today. Coming up in a few minutes, our buddy Ryan Ripken is going to join us. We'll talk about the Orioles' current 5-game win streak after an emphatic win over the Red Sox in the opener yesterday. Also later on, we will catch up with our friend Patrick Stevens. We'll recap Notre Dame's thrashing of Maryland in the NCAA championship game. A bummer, to be sure. You kind of get all that. Oh, maybe they could do it. Maybe they could. Nope. 15-5. It was. The Maryland scored the first 2 goals of the game, and you were like, "Whoa, what's happening here?" And then you said, "I think I'll watch baseball. I think I'll just stick with the baseball game, and that'll be that." Also later on, of course, we lost a legend yesterday as the great Bill Walton passed away, and I did not know how close Bill Walton and Maryland legend Len Elmore were. I had no idea how close of friends they were, and I was watching this video that they did ahead of Maryland's game against UCLA last year, and it was really special. So Len Elmore is going to check in with us a little bit later on to share some memories of his friend, Bill Walton. So we will look forward to that during the course of today's show. Today's show is brought to you by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com, proud sponsors of County Sports Zone. If you missed any of the action during high school championship season, you can find all of the results at countysports.zone. Countysports.zone, again, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. So 5 guys on the board. Speaking of which, I'm kind of hungry. I could go for a burger. 5 guys.
5 guys.
Yes, on the board. Because we didn't do a show on Friday so that I could take a long weekend. So we weren't here for five games. From Thursday night, and the Orioles, of course, won all 5 of them. And as it turns out, 5 different players were man of the match. Look, we could go over them by one. I don't think we want to spend that much time on games that happened a week ago. But Jorge Mateo on Thursday night. Thursday night was a weird night, man. That, of course, being the night with the pop-up in the 9th inning and the interference call that had 2 different former baseball players text me to say, I have never seen that before. I said, that makes obviously all of us. None of us had ever seen it before, and I think we found out that Elias did some research, and in the modern era of baseball, as far back as they could possibly go, there's never been a game that ended in an interference call on a infield fly rule.
Yeah.
So there's that. Great call, though. Just a tremendous call. It's one of those things where even if, by the letter of the law, it's right, you're like, dude, really?
Paul Valley and I were talking about it. It's similar to the Joe Adell being called out at second base a few weeks ago against the Angels.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
similar call.
Yeah, it was very
went in our favor.
Correct. And again, whoever it was on the Apple broadcast, that's their former umpire that they use, because it's not Dale Scott anymore. I don't remember who it was they were using as their former umpire.
They can hire Angel Hernandez.
They could. He's available.
Heard he needs work. Yeah.
He's very popular on social media. So whoever they were using was going out of his way to defend the call. And I think it was Dontrell Willis who was working the game on Friday night. It was
I think it was, yeah.
Right, but do you have to make the call? He's like, well, you're allowed some discretion. And I'm like, if there's any discretion allowed, maybe that's the place where you use the discretion and say, nah, Chief, not going to call this there. But yes, to your point, it was beneficial, obviously, to the Orioles when things were getting away from them in the 9th inning as they'd already allowed 4 runs. In that game, of course, Jorge Mateo had driven in 3 with a big 3-run homer, so that was kind of the big blow in the game. That was the reason why he was man of the match.
He's hitting the ball hard right now. I mean, you can't. Yesterday even had a few hard, and
there's no debate at the moment about like Jorge Mateo is your second baseman, and he's playing so well defensively,
right?
Which, as we talked about last week,
as he should be, though.
You say that, but the first week of the season, like on opening day, it was a little adventurous for Jorge Mateo.
I remember. Yeah.
The first week of the season, when they were trying to keep Jackson Holliday down and sort of forcing this experiment at second base, I was like, yeah, I don't know that Jorge Mateo is a second baseman, dude. Like, I just don't know that that's his position. And then, sure enough, he's obviously playing it at a very high level, and he's hitting, and not just hitting against lefties, he's hitting. So at the moment, there is no world in which there is consideration for a Jackson Holliday return. Like, that's just the reality.
Well, also the numbers with Jackson Holliday.
Yeah, they haven't been great since he
not so good.
Yeah, got back to Norfolk. Although I thought he was starting to come around a little bit.
The on-base percentage is good. Yeah. The average itself is not very good, but average is,
no argument for that to be the case at the moment. Jorge Mateo is playing a fine second base. Plenty of other conversations that can be had about Connor Norby and Heston Kjerstad and production from some of your outfielders. We can talk about all those things, but no debate to be had about second base at the moment. Next up, Adley Rutschman, pinch hit home run on Friday night when the Orioles needed it. He's man of the match from Friday. Next on the list, Dylan Tate. That was nails on Saturday. Man, Orioles struggling. They fall behind after Gavin Sheets, our friend. That's heartbreaking for me. I really love Gavin. He's one of my favorite people and could not be a better guy.
Great swing, too.
Oh,
Great swing.
God, right? So you feel like and he struggled a bit, and so like I want to see him get going. And then you're like, nah, but not right now. So he clubs that 3-run triple.
Yeah.
Orioles trailing. They turn to Dylan Tate. He gets out of the jam. He gives them 2 more innings of utterly nails relief on Saturday. I had some people arguing for Suarez on Saturday. I get it. Suarez was gutty for 4 innings, given that he was sort of pressed into starting. But, dude, Dylan Tate coming out of the bullpen in that spot.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like the Suarez argument. Not sure I like that.
I didn't think he was bad. Like, he was good. I mean, I do want to say he was good. He was good on Saturday. But Dylan Tate was nails on Saturday. Utterly nails. So he was man of the match from Saturday. Then we get to Sunday. There was obviously no debate there. Kyle Bradish was brilliant. As we talked about on the radio yesterday, I couldn't. There was a very, very, very small group of people that was trying to argue that Kyle Bradish should have been allowed to keep going. What I appreciated was how small that group of people was. Like, it's not even worth fighting about because the group of people, I think it was impressive how many Orioles fans understood, despite the fact that we like to fight about literally everything Brandon Hyde does for some reason. We are obsessed as a fan base with, like, the manager and every decision that's made. That was the only decision that could possibly be made. And if anything, it was a little surprising that he let him finish the 7th inning, given he was going from 74 pitches in his last start to what ended up being 103 this time out. Maybe if he doesn't walk Jolks in the 7th inning, which was a long at bat, I believe it was a 9 to 10 pitch at bat. Maybe if he doesn't walk that guy, then they're in a tougher spot because then you're like, oh, he's only at 92 pitches. Do we let him go back out to the 8th inning and see what happens? I think it all worked out perfectly for Brandon Hyde and for Kyle Bradish to understand why it was. I'm sure that Kyle Bradish, the competitor, is like, dude, I don't know how many chances I'm going to have to throw a no-hitter, so the fact that I've got one going through 7, I'd like a shot at it, but this is the Johan Santana argument. You got to save a guy from themselves. There's no world in which you're letting someone who, again, is found money. Like, every single one of us thought Kyle Bradish was not throwing a pitch for the Baltimore Orioles.
I was going to use that expression on Dylan Tate about 2 minutes ago.
Oh, found money? Yeah.
Yeah, found money.
I'll give you that, right?
I mean, Paul and I talked about last year on the show that we didn't even know where he was.
Yeah.
You didn't hear a thing about Dylan Tate. You didn't know if Dylan Tate was alive.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And now he's, through, I think, 13 games pitched this year, and his ERA is under 3. I mean,
he
can't complain.
What you saw on Saturday was the argument. Before the season began, we were talking about, like, hey, what if Dylan Tate could be the 2022 version of Dylan Tate? That guy on Saturday was the 2022 version of Dylan Tate. And I don't know that he can be that moving forward, but, boy, it was awfully encouraging. So, yes, Kyle Bradish, the obvious answer from Sunday. And then yesterday, as I said, it could have been any of them. My God, everyone had a day yesterday. I ended up going with Kyle Stowers. if you wanted to say Ryan Mountcastle, I feel like I've robbed Ryan Mountcastle a couple of times recently. I feel like he was in the argument on Thursday. He was certainly in the conversation yesterday, but a couple of doubles for Kyle Stowers yesterday on a day where everybody was hitting. Boy, that was refreshing, man. That was really refreshing for a team that has struggled to get on base this season. Yes, they have scored runs, but it has all been by the home run. To see station-to-station baseball, to see multiple hits innings put together and not just a reliance on the home run ball, that was really, really refreshing yesterday.
It was good baseball. But I think Ryan Mountcastle overall, he goes as the man of the week almost. If you look over, I guess the last 5 to 7 games, his batting average is above 400, a couple home runs mixed in there, a lot of doubles. He's been good. He's been really good.
So it's funny you say that. We do a 3 up and 3 down each week now. That's a new segment we started here. And we, despite the fact that we didn't do a show yesterday because I just want to keep it weekly, we decided to go ahead and post it up at glennclarkradio.com. He was not – I made Bradish my number 1 for the week at 3 up because –
That's fair.
Jesus Christ, dude.
7 no-hit innings, 11 Ks.
And he had a nice start, obviously. Before that, unfortunately, the rains came, and he wasn't able to continue it, but he had 5 really good innings against the Cardinals last week as well. Like, Kyle Bradish was number 1 on the list, and I actually think that I put Kimbrel number 2, and it was kind of like a selfish thing where, like, we have beat up Craig Kimbrel so much
no doubt.
That he was really good, and I wanted to give him credit, but Mountcastle was 3 on my list. And, yes, if you had included yesterday in the conversation, then probably at that point Ryan Mountcastle. Maybe still not number 1 because, again, God, Kyle Bradish, Jesus.
Yeah.
But certainly I think number 2 at that point because Mountcastle had a hell of a week. Got a 6-game hit streak now going?
I think so, yeah.
6-game hit streak for Ryan Mountcastle. Nice to see him get going this past week.
You still wish the OBP was a little bit higher, but it's okay.
But you can say that about basically everyone in this lineup.
Absolutely fair.
The goofy part is like the only we've had a lot of OBP conversation on this show.
Okay.
People have accused me of being obsessed with it. I'm like,
it's a good indicator. I mean, what can you say?
It's a very good indicator, and no one wins the World Series with a 303 on base percentage. It does not happen.
Right.
Now, the argument that a lot of people have made to me is that's going to correct itself, and I get the thought process. Either the veterans are going to get things turned around or someone else is going to get the opportunity to, and their on-base percentage will come up as a team, maybe. But before yesterday, you were 8 points lower than the lowest on-base percentage of anyone that's won a World Series in this millennium. And there's one team that's an outlier. That's the 2014 Giants had a 311 on-base percentage. Other than that, the lowest team on base percentage of a World Series winner is 319. So you were 16 points lower than the second lowest on base percentage of a World Series winner. It's a problem. And I did some of the research on it, and home run rate falls by about 8% in the postseason, whereas like walk rate only falls by about 4% in the postseason. Like, it's a better, to me, indicator than home run rate is. So yeah. I would like to see that. Ironically, Anthony Santander is like the one guy that takes walks. He just doesn't get any hits.
I was just checking on the number. It's 284 at the moment.
Yeah, which
is not good.
It's not good. But then you look at his batting average, and you're like, well, he is taking walks. If only he was hitting a little bit more.
He's got 9 homers in the year, which is awful. But and he's come up clutch the other day in the White Sox series. He came up very clutch.
I said this on the radio yesterday. You wouldn't think of Anthony Santander as having a bad week last week because you think of the 2 home runs that were both big against the White Sox. Not excluding because I don't even going into yesterday, he was 3 for 22 for the week.
Right.
With 10 strikeouts.
Yeah.
It was dreadful.
I'm just waiting on the Austin Hayes-like month where Santander will, he'll 7 home runs in the month and he'll go crazy. I'm waiting for that.
No, you're right. That has a tendency to happen. Look, I'm not panicked about anybody. I'm not. I do think that at the moment, now it's interesting that, like Cedric Mullins has a couple. I thought that we were leaning into Cedric Mullins plays against righties. Austin Hayes plays against lefties. Colton Cowser plays every day. I thought that was what they were leaning towards at this point. And I still think that for the time being, that's the answer. It will be interesting. And Colton Cowser has, my argument against sitting Cedric Mullins was just every time anybody else played center field, you were like, get Cedric Mullins back in center field. But Colton Cowser has handled himself well. And if you look at his baseball savant numbers,
really good.
unbelievable.
Really good.
Now, again, that's more of that is in left field than it's been in center field. And it's easier to have great range in left field than it is to have great range in center field. But they're so good that I'm willing to keep riding this thing out for a little while. And I think that's for the moment, the answer is Mullins against righties, Hayes against lefties, and Cowser every day. But that doesn't address the fact that, to the point, Anthony Santander is struggling significantly. That doesn't solve that problem. You kind of have to work through that, or at some point, because the answer is not going to be Kobe Mayo for some time, do you revisit Heston Kjerstad, who started hitting again last week after he had a little bump when he went right back down? I don't know. I don't have that answer today. Today, I think the answer is Mullins against righties, Hayes against lefties. But in the end, 5 straight wins. Yes, 4 of them were against the White Sox, and the White Sox are very, very bad. Although, in fairness, Crochet is legit.
Very legit. Eric Fetty pitched a good game,
Eric
too.
Fetty was phenomenal.
I'm looking at Eric Fetty as a possible trade target for the O's down the line.
That's interesting.
It's a possible pickup. He's not – look, it was a better game than he usually has. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But Eric Fetty is a accomplished veteran, somewhat accomplished
true.
veteran at this point.
It's playing a cheap number.
On a White Sox team.
Right.
So, you never know.
I was thinking about Kopech, too. I know it didn't go well
maybe.
for him on Saturday, obviously. But, I was thinking about Kopech as perhaps being an arm that could be –
Stuff is really good.
Not as the end-of-the-line guy. Not as your ninth-inning workhorse, but as I've said before, I think this team needs multiple bullpen arms.
I agree. I agree.
I definitely think one of them needs to be a proven workhorse closer, if you can find that guy. Ryan Helsley is someone who stands out. But I do think they need more than just one bullpen arm right now. I think on the whole, this group is just our buddy Spencer Schultz described it as not special. And I was like, yeah, I think that's a fair way of putting it.
That's fair.
Because I was trying to describe, a lot of people have been pushing about Corbin Burns pitching a 7th inning, and I'm like, no, the other night, Corbin Burns was fine. I mean, he was good enough, but there was no argument for him needing to go back out there for a 7th inning at that point. And I do appreciate that part of the thought process has been, we want to make sure Corbin Burns, who's on pace to go 20 innings beyond his career high, is available to us in October.
Exactly.
That's the thought process right now, is we need him in October. But I do understand at the same time, the bullpen's been asked to do a lot, and he was like, I don't even think the bullpen's taxed. I just don't think they're special. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That's probably a better way of saying it. That every time you turn to this bullpen, you find yourself kind of holding your breath a little bit. Okay. And boy, it's been a bummer with Ynier Cano this season because
it has been.
I really wanted to see him step up and maybe.
He's a fun player, but it's been a ride.
Not good. I was arguing for him as closer a couple of weeks ago. That, of course, has to be withdrawn. It's been bad all around. All right, you want to call Ryan? We don't have to take a commercial break. We can keep plow ahead. So 5 guys go up on the board for man of the match from the past 5 games, and fun stretch that they'll look to continue tonight. Although a little bit of a more difficult task tonight, as Brian Bayo is on the mound for the Red Sox. Grayson Rodriguez goes for the Birds. Today's show is brought to you by this, speaking of Grayson Rodriguez, this print issue of Press Box, which is available for free at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box. You can read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. Our guy Luke Jackson dives into Grayson Rodriguez's path to trying to become the Orioles' next homegrown ace. It's a great story. Got the big Jim Palmer bump on the broadcast. You can go check that out right now for free at your neighborhood Royal Farms, anywhere you find Pressbox, and read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. All right, let's continue to talk some Orioles this morning. Our next guest, a media mogul. Of course, you hear him on 105.7 The Fan, the Ryan Ripken Show. Everywhere you turn, there this man is. He is, of course, our buddy Ryan Ripken, and he's back with us now here on GCR. What's up, buddy? How are you? How was your holiday weekend?
It was good. It was good. It always comes and goes, right? And you know what? I'll tell you this. It's a reminder. You mentioned the baseball season in the intro. Even though not playing anymore and going through the grind of it, as we find out, baseball never sleeps, right? And man, did the boys have a lot of baseball going on here, Glenn, the last 5 days? I guess I could say the last 8 days or so. But hey, you ought to be feeling pretty good after yesterday.
So I'll ask the important question, Ryan. Are the Orioles fine?
Of course.
Are they fine?
Oh yeah. some would say. I've been told I say that too much, but I really do think that they are fine. And the only point I try to make when I say something like that is there's so many ups and downs of the season, and this is a really, really good team. Is it a perfect team? No, they're not a perfect team, and they still got things that they're going to work out. But, to really get an assessment of where they're going to be is we need to get to July, and right now, what I love with this team is how do you handle adversity? St. Louis, that was not great. That was a tough series, and that was frustrating, but how do you handle getting swept for the first time? How do you handle those situations, and how do you avoid slumping or even more? You go and find every single way, I think, to win a baseball game in Chicago. It felt like some things I didn't see and some things I don't know were the correct call or not. But nonetheless, O's are winners of 5 straight, and I mean, the O's are fine and they're back on track.
So, inherently I agree with you, right? The Orioles are fine, and we all know they're a very good baseball team. I am in the place now where I am viewing it in the context of their ability to win a World Series, right? Because I just think that we genuinely believe they're that good. And the thing that I have probably talked and written about the most, and I've gotten some pushback and some fight from some specific folks, is my concerns about the on-base percentage. And for what it's worth, it did tick back up over the weekend. It's now up to 304 from as low as 301 over the course of the weekend. But what I point out, Ryan, is that, the second worst, the 2014 Giants won the World Series with a 311 on-base percentage as a team. That's by far the worst of the millennium, right? The second worst was 319. Right. The Orioles are 15 points worse than the second worst on-base percentage as a team of any World Series winner. And I get that there's plenty of time and that can go up, but my point is, it needs to go up. They're hitting lots of home runs. Yesterday, to your point, was extraordinarily encouraging to me because they were playing like Orioles baseball from a year ago where you're getting hits, stringing in innings together. But how concerned is it fair to be in the context of winning a World Series about a 304 team on-base percentage?
Well, it can go a few different ways, right? And that's definitely been a glaring focus, right? And what's the purpose of the game? Get on and then find a way to get in. And look, when you're swinging the bat really well, which the Orioles have the ability as good as anybody to hit the ball out of the yard, you feel good. But you're right. That is something that they're going to have to continue to evolve as an offense, right? And that's the reality of it. But are they capable of doing that? Yeah. I mean, yesterday was a prime example of, 1 through 9, finding different ways to get on. And it's interesting when people correlate OBP and you need to find ways to get on. So if you're not getting hits, you need to walk, right? Well, the Orioles last year weren't a team that was high in walk rate last year. So whatever identity that they're going to be, whether it's being more selective at the plate. Yesterday, I've heard other rumblings about, swinging too early in the count, and maybe it's swing decisions is the right word. But yesterday, the Orioles were swinging early in the count, but they were making contact and having good swings on pitches in the zone. So maybe it's a combination of taking advantage of pitches in the zone, finding a rhythm, when you're not feeling as good, finding different ways to be effective. So I definitely understand your thought process. That's definitely going to be something that they're going to have to continue to work on because at the end of the day, home runs are great, but they're not always going to be the thing that you can count on. So I like Glenn, I like to tell people, I really like to get to get to July and then look at this and go, where are they at? Sure. And this is not just for OBP, by the way. Yeah. I just think with anything across the board, because then I can go, all right, you got through this gauntlet of a month. You're about, to the midway point. All-Star breaks right around the corner. What do the Orioles really need to fix? Because that, to me, will give a really good sample size on what they need to do.
So, I think everything that you just said is fair. And I do think the point is, at some point, either some of these veterans are going to get things turned around or they're likely to be replaced by someone who you have the expectation could be more productive. With that in mind, it feels like at the moment, because there's three guys that I think are really under the microscope, right? It's Santander, it's Mullins, it's Hayes. And it feels like at the moment the answer is Mullins plays against righties, Hayes plays against lefties, Cowser plays every day. It's just what it feels like the way to handle that right now is. But I do think there's a warranted conversation about, well, at some point, should defense matter a little bit less, and should Heston Kjerstad get a shot? And at some point, if there's no room in the infield, should Connor Norby get a look to play like a corner outfield spot, as they were playing him a little bit in left field to start the season down at AAA? Is there a point at which it's time? I know, that Mayo would be in the conversation, but obviously because he's hurt, he's not in the conversation right now. But is there a point at which, in viewing those three veterans, you start to say, hey, it's time to consider someone else and give them an extended look?
Yeah, I think that, I'm always a big believer if players that have already been in the big leagues and have shown you over years, whether or not it's been fantastic or it's been average, whatever it may be, you have a baseline of what they've done, right? So a guy like Anthony Santander, he came up in a big moment against the White Sox with that big home run in the eighth inning. Overall average is low, but if we're looking at his body of work over the last two seasons, leading RBI guy on the team, extra base hits, now both of those seem to be falling to Gunnar Henderson this year.
Right.
But the point standing, Santander's averaged 30 home runs and led the team in RBIs the last two seasons. Austin Hayes, 18 home runs averaged-ish, and over 30 doubles season. That's what he's averaged over the last 3 years. Cedric Mullins obviously had that tremendous 2021, and then really since then it's trying to be healthy, but you see his value when he's on the field. So there comes a point, and that's why I was saying about those guys deserve more grace period because of what they've done, and you see how good they are at their peak. But at the same time, you kind of got to go with what's working at the moment. And I think something that's different now is, and I talked with guys like Cowser and Westberg about this when they came on the Ryan Ripken show, is the younger players realizing to try to take advantage of their situation if it seems less, right? And how about Kyle Stowers yesterday?
Sure.
And Stowie now has opened up the possibility that he might be deserving of more at-bats.
Yep.
Now, what that looks like, I don't know long-term, but this is something that for these guys that are trying to break through on a team that already had a lot of success and proven veterans, this is the way it's going to have to be. But I'm with you. Cowser's proven that he should be in there every single day, but it's hard to give up on those veteran guys with the situation. But it's an unbelievably great problem for the Orioles to have, but it can be a very stressful and frustrating thing for players,
no doubt,
especially the prospects, because that's what I feel for the most is, you feel like you're ready. You feel like you can help this team, but the hard thing is being patient and waiting for that moment when it presents itself. So that's the most I'm proud of, like with Kyle Stowers, is that he knew that he was not the guy he wasn't even the top 5 outfielders, essentially. In this case, if you count Kjerstad going up before him, he waited patiently. And so I think for these guys, it's not the right fun answer, but if you can be patient and kind of wait it out and do what you can control, I think there could be some more opportunities as we move to July and August.
Ryan Ripken is with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Ryan, I wonder your thoughts. Reed and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday. Watching Kyle Bradish on Sunday, and it feels like a miracle right now because I think the majority of us were absolutely convinced that Kyle Bradish was not going to throw a pitch for this team this season. But I have made peace with Corbin Burns is not going to be a Baltimore Oriole moving forward. Like, this move was made for 1 year and 1 year only, and that's okay, right? Like, I was okay with them making the move for 1 year only. If that changes and, God bless, right? I'm all in if that ends up being the case. But I've just made peace with the fact that it isn't. Watching Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez, do you feel like, even if that's the case, that Burns is gone, do you have an amount of confidence that, like, they have their frontline starters? Like, they're here. they don't necessarily need to be spending the money on big-ticket free agent pitchers. Not to say they shouldn't spend any money on pitching, and obviously John Means' future is very much in the question here. But, like, I don't know. I'm starting to convince myself that they really might have the guys, like a true 1-2 for the next couple of years in Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah, I mean, I even, last year finished. If you go back and look at last year, the moment that changed for Kyle Bradish was that game at Milwaukee. First inning, some weird things kind of happened. Some balls just found holes, and you could tell Kyle was frustrated. And then it was like, you know what? Enough. And he mowed down the rest of the lineup. Orioles came back to win that game. And then since that moment, Kyle Bradish was one of the best pitchers in baseball, right? Grayson Rodriguez, when he came back up, after his demotion last year, July on, one of the best pitchers in baseball. And I didn't think it was a fluke. Now you have one more year of experience, and I'm with you. I mean, the fact that Kyle's pitching, I am so happy. Do I get nervous every single time he's out there? Absolutely. But am I like, man, he's so darn good because I spent time with him. I've seen his stuff. We were teammates, and watching him at the big league level, no doubt it's frontline stuff. So I'm with you. I mean, the thing that's crazy right now is the Orioles, you could make the case when they're all healthy, everything's good, Burns, Rodriguez, and Kyle Bradish are 3 of the top 10 pitchers in the game. You can argue that. And I'm not saying that that's how it is right at this moment, but imagine that. So when you're looking at that 3 of the top 10, that's incredible. If Burns is gone, I love the fact of where Bradish and Grayson are. And I think that they're going to slowly start to rack up a lot of accolades here as long as they can stay healthy, because stuff-wise, as we're finding out, it's as good as it gets at the big league level. And the cool thing is with their stuff, they're figuring out how to pitch. It's one thing to say, man, you got talent, you got elite stuff. It's another thing to go out there and execute against some of the best in the world swinging the bat.
Dude, Zach and I were talking about what on Sunday. The thing that impressed me the most with Bradish is like he recognized immediately that the strike zone for right-handed hitters was like 2 to 3 inches off the plate, and it was like Burns-esque how he was painting the spot. Like it was something to behold, man. It really was. Let me go to the bullpen real quick because Craig Kimbrell obviously has bounced back nicely from what was a really rough stretch. But are you in the camp of, hey, that proves he's definitively the guy, or more like, hey, that's a good thing, glad it's happening, but they still probably should be looking for a workhorse type back end of the guy, and Craig Kimbrell can still be a helpful arm as well?
Well, I love the fact, I actually did a breakdown with watching Craig, and for me, his stuff still looks really good. It might not be him throwing as hard as he used to, or being as dominant as he once was, but a guy, a veteran that knows how to pitch, and he seems to have found that groove. I believe it's 7 straight scoreless outings since his Washington Nationals blown save opportunity. So, but here's the thing, and this is why I say the assessment of your roster. I think the Orioles are going to look to try to upgrade their roster, and this is not whether they think that Craig Kimbrell is the guy or not. It's just that you got to evaluate what arms do you have and what's available and what's the price. And for the Orioles, we've seen it. Look, you don't know where injuries are going to pop up. Again, bingo cards here. Again, not on mine. Dean Kramer going on the IL, John Means going back to the IL, Grayson having a little bit of a stint there, and then the bullpen having that kind of roller coaster where they pitch really well, but then depth is a question at the bullpen department, because you don't know really, I guess, your minor league options. McDermott and Povich starters, right? But you don't know where it all stands. Brian Baker's down there as well. Nick Vespi, man, I feel bad for Vespi. Right. No one's rode the shuttle more up and down, and a great guy that I think can help the team. But that's a different point here. I think the Orioles are going to continue to try to upgrade, and I really do think they're going to get to July and go, do we need another back-end guy? My guess is they're going to say yes. We're going to try to go do it. But then the next question, Glenn, is what is the price? And something that the Orioles are not going to do. They're not going to go and make an impulse move to give up guys that they don't think that it reaches the value. So that's the one thing to watch. But I think that they're definitely going to look to do that, because they say you can never have enough good starting pitching, right? I think at the back end, you can never have enough talented pitchers at the back end. And one of the most impressive things that I saw way back when the Royals had a guy in the 7th, 8th, and 9th, all three of those guys could have been closers for that Royals team that won
Bingo.
the World Series. So there it is. So I think that they're definitely going to be looking, but what happens is your guess is as good as mine, Glenn.
Yep. No. What you just said, though, is that's the way that I felt a year ago. I wanted to see the Orioles in the market for Josh Hader even before Felix Bautista got hurt. Like in the postseason, you need multiple closers. You need a closer to come in and get you out of a jam in the 5th inning. A closer that you can count on in that spot, and then someone to go finish up the game. So, I'm in complete agreement with you. All right, do you want to share? I'm sure much sadness for you, like everybody in baseball, about Angel Hernandez no longer being a part of the game. I know it's just terrible news for I think everyone who loves the sport, right?
Yeah, and here's the thing. And this is what happens, and this is why being an umpire is a job I never wanted at all. It's that he can be the best guy in the world, but no one's going to remember him for that as on the baseball field, right? Because it's the job. And look, it's been to say lightly, he has not had the brightest moments calling baseball games. But again, that's the reality of it. I think,
it's a very polite way of saying it, Ryan.
Yeah,
it's a very polite way.
This is the one thing I do say with all of it, right? Is like I sit there and I go, dang, I've heard a lot of good stories of him doing great for others or making a moment for someone.
That's
but then on the baseball field is a whole different story, and I will leave it at that. But I think I'll just say this: I think it was the right time. It was the right time to move on.
I think it's a very
polite way. I
polite
hope he enjoys retirement.
Where are you? I talked a lot about this last week. I know our common friend Gavin Sheets was on with you, was on with us. We talked about it, and I was talking about it with Kyle. Where are you with what the answer is between ABS and the challenge system moving forward? Because it does feel like it's something's coming. And I think Kirkshin told me he's convinced it's going to happen within 5 years. That within 5 years there will be a change. Where are you between challenges and full-on, automated balls and strikes?
Definitely something's coming. And if you see them testing it in the minor leagues, guess what the next stop would be?
Yep.
It would be going up to the big leagues. Pitch clock being the most specific one, right, of recent, and even the ghost runner on second base. That was another thing. It's the minor leagues are the proving grounds for all of this, right? So I do think something's coming, and this is the only thing that if there's a worry for me is I want the calls to be more consistently right. And I think honestly, quite frankly, I was actually having this conversation with my dad recently. Even the umpiring is more accountable and probably even better now than it was 2 decades ago. But it's still not to the level that you want it to be. So what does that mean? And I think that is where you got to look at what do you want that to look like. Because another thing here, Glenn, that and maybe I got the old feeling of baseball in me, but framing as a catcher, I think is one of those important things. And I'm watching some of these games, and the catcher, the ball kind of drops, and it might cross the strike zone, and you're going, man, like pretty good pitch by the pitcher, but if I'm the umpire or I'm the batter or even the pitcher, I'm thinking, well. That didn't look like a strike because of how it was almost caught. So I think in some cases, if they are going to go to more of an ABS system, is that going to eliminate a skill of catchers, which I think is so valuable? So that's the only thing I worry, but I do
Ryan,
think they're going to have to move towards a system.
Dempsey, maybe this is just an age thing. Dempsey went off about it a couple weeks ago on Twitter, and I love it because, Rick's always the most positive human on the face of the planet, right? So, whenever you get angry Uncle Rick, I live for it. I am for firing pitch framing into the sun. This is part of the argument for me why I like ABS, is his argument was, dude, look at catching right now. Blocking has never been worse. Pop time has never been worse. We have never seen the skills that of a generation erode in favor of this focus on pitch framing, of deception, right? Like, get rid of the deception part of the game and get back to the catchers having to prioritize, pop time, throwing, blocking, all of the stuff that inherently catchers are supposed to be able to do. And his argument was, I don't blame them. I'm not mad at them. Like, this is what they're told matters. Like, if you want to be a catcher, you've got to be a pitch framer now. And that's it. That's what you're focusing on constantly, is a part of the game that's nothing more than deception. So my argument in half for ABS is I want pitch framing fired into the – it's almost comical sometimes. Like, it almost feels like it's hurting them how far they're going in pitch framing. I'm in favor of full-on ABS. It feels like most of the players that I've talked to are like, no, let's not go there. Let's go to the challenge system, in part because they're worried about what it means for the size of the strike zone if they go to full ABS.
Yeah.
But dude, like, maybe it's just because I'm a tennis player and I watch tennis. Like, tell me what it is. It's either a ball or a strike, and let's move on with it and stop with the shenanigans and the charades, and let's just play baseball. Man, I am so in favor of ABS.
Yeah, I think I think that it's moving again like that. But again, I think that for some hitters, there will be whenever it happens, whatever it is, there's going to be a grace period of getting comfortable with it. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't like it because of the what you feel the strike zone is, and maybe over time. Because let's just face it, every umpire has their zone for that day, right? So for players, then maybe that's easier of a learning curve when you're like, okay, this is what the zone's going to be all the time. But is that something that's slightly different than you might be used to doing?
Right.
So there's that. And one thing I want to say with catchers, though, I agree that there's other parts of the game that need to be focused on. But the one thing I'll say that's even harder for catchers now is that the advantages base runners have. So the one thing I'll give them the grace, it is much hard.
Yes.
It is so much harder in that regard to catch and throw guys out than it's ever been before. But the other part, blocking, calling a good game, making sure you're fundamentally sound with that, all of that's important. And it's a correlation that some of the teams that have, arguably, when you say some of the best catchers in the big leagues, aka Adley Rutschman and having James McCann, that definitely helps the staff out, and the Orioles overall have had a lot of success with those two guys behind the dish.
I kept you longer than I should have, Ryan. Give me a plug.
It's all good. We like having fun.
Dude, I know. I always appreciate you, man. What all can I plug for you? I know you got a million things. What's coming up?
Well, I think I'm on 105.7 The Fan tonight, doing the Baltimore baseball tonight. What else do I got going on?
Find out when he drives an hour up to Pickles, and he's like, "Right, it was me tonight, right?"
Yeah, I think it's me. Maybe I'll call Bob Haney and confirm that. But yeah, Ryan Ripken Show, 105.7 The Fan. I go on Fox 45 Sundays, talk baseball with Rocco DeSangro, and then when I have my other free time, I get to come on and have a great time chatting it up with friends like you, Glenn.
Love you, buddy. Always appreciate you. At Ryan Ripken, of course, on Twitter is how you follow him. We'll talk again soon. Thanks for doing this, dude.
Of course. Anytime for you. See ya.
It's Ryan Ripken with us here on GCR. Always appreciate him. Yeah, man. It was one of my favorite tweets of the year was Uncle Rick getting after catching. I live for it. Rick always I've been close with Rick for a long time, and I know that Rick always got beat up because the Orioles stunk, and he was like, well, but let me tell you, I know, and I understood, and in fairness, at times I beat him up too, but I did it from a loving place because he's Rick effing Dempsey,
right?
And we should be grateful for Rick Dempsey. He won the 1983 World Series. We should be thankful that we have Rick Dempsey in our lives. I want to make that abundantly clear, and I will never – and by the way, all of you have had a night when you've been out somewhere and Rick Dempsey showed up at the bar and it made your year. Every single one of you has got a story about Rick Dempsey. So I am, yes, defensive about Rick Dempsey in a way that other people maybe aren't because they got frustrated with the fact that, the Orioles were terrible and he would constantly try to, give some silver lining about all of it. I get it. And he would acknowledge it, by the way. He would always joke about, well, Glenn, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. It's the understatement of the century, Rick. You're not half full. You think the glass is always, 90% full when it might be 10%.
Well, we can say he knew it was coming. And
yeah, that will go with that, right?
Yeah, we'll
go
with
with that. Not bad. I love Rick. Rick going off on Twitter a couple weeks ago was my favorite moment of the year.
I didn't see this.
Oh,
I
it was
missed this.
Wonderful. Somebody.
I don't know what happened.
Oh, hang on. It's still probably one of his most recent tweets.
And you said this was on pitch framing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody shared
Okay.
out. He was retweeting something.
And you're right about the pop time comment is interesting because I've noticed that as well. Pop time has been rather abysmal across the league.
Some random person tweeted a bunch of catchers with a video of, I can't even tell who this is with the pitch framing, like an absurd. It must have been Diaz from the Astros.
Okay.
And tweeted, every MLB catcher I have played with would agree. This is apparently a somebody that was a player, so I don't know who this person is. Sorry, I don't know who it is. Would agree that this pitch framing nonsense is an embarrassment. Rick, 27 years of professional catching, 24 of them in MLB. I have never seen anything like this. Passed balls that should be blocked.
Right.
No signs.
Right.
Feel bad for some of the guys because they know better but are not given a choice but to do it this way.
Right.
Love that. Oh, I wanted to eat it up, man. And I don't know. I don't have the data that backs up, like, this is the worst era of pop time or blah. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I can't back that up. And Ryan's point, of course, we all know it is far more difficult to hold runners because of the rules, right? Because you can only,
Sure.
throw over once anymore.
Sure.
So I get it. That's part of the conversation. It's one of the things that we deal with the Orioles because the Orioles have not had a great season in holding runners on this year. But how much of that is on the pitchers? How much of that is on Adley Rutschman?
Yeah.
I think it's been a mixed bag, right, for what's been going on this season. And I still think that Adley Rutschman's calling of the games is phenomenal. I don't think that your pitchers perform, not to say they don't have good pitchers, but I don't think the way that they have performed over the last couple of seasons, when none of them had the pedigree, other than Grayson Rodriguez, he was the only one of this group that had the pedigree of he's going to be a star. Cole Irvin's not that guy. Dean Kramer's not that guy. Bradish was a little bit closer, but not this, right? Like,
right.
He was intriguing, but not this. I think that Adley Rutschman deserves more credit for his calling of the games than perhaps we give because
I agree.
He doesn't throw the ball maybe as well as we all thought he was going to throw the ball when he first came up.
Yeah, absolutely great point. And McCann doesn't do a bad job either.
No.
I like the way McCann calls games. And a clutch hitter as well.
Yes.
I think that the value, if you look at the numbers online, you're not going to say it's great.
No.
And his OPS plus is 45, so
Right.
55% worse
It's
than
so funny you
your
bring it up.
average major league hitter.
Kyle Gibson would tell you that James McCann was a significant part of.
I bet.
Kyle Gibson would say, and he did. He said it directly. The guy that deserves way more credit. You know what's really funny? It's a backup catcher thing too. Did you ever read the Tal the Backup Catcher, the Eric Kratz book?
No, I did not.
It's Eric Kratz and Tim Brown.
I might have to read that.
It's
Okay.
a really
Yeah.
phenomenal read. When we did, Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year last year, and we decided we were going to do Brandon Hyde and the team being the team of the year. The conversation we had with Brandon Hyde, I gave to him, hey, is there any one person that we don't realize is more responsible for how everything changed here? And normally when you ask a question like that, you expect someone to just name everyone, right?
Right,
Like,
sure.
That's the way that it goes.
Yeah.
You just ask it hoping you might get a good answer, but your expectation is, oh, well, this guy, and all of a sudden you realize they've named everyone. Brandon Hyde, within a split second, Robbie Chirinos.
Wow.
Robbie Chirinos.
Interesting.
He taught this group how to win. He made this group believe that they had the right to win. Everything changed with Robbie Chirinos, and I was like, wow, that's wild, right? And then hearing Kyle Gibson again removed, like it took him signing somewhere else for him to have rave about the responsibility that James McCann had for this team, and it really does speak to a lot of the lessons that Eric Kratz and Tim Brown talked about. Like the backup catcher in so many ways is almost like the team dad. Like it's almost like you're the
that's a good way to put it.
You're the team psychologist. You're you're the guy that almost has to control everything.
And generally they come in. Chirinos is a great example of it. McCann had a couple great years in Chicago and not so much with the Mets. But
But thank you for paying him.
These guys come in, though, with a solid background. They're usually veterans, and that's what you get out of your backup catcher. There is huge value of having a backup catcher who is frankly very experienced. A lot of people talked about Blake Hunt when the Orioles made the trade for him a few weeks ago. And I'm not sure if you said it, but it was someone on Orioles Twitter said it. They were like, this does not mean at all, because there were a lot of people saying that Blake Hunt should, be a backup catcher at the end of the season, and I'm not sure where that came from. But people need to talk about the value more that James McCann brings this team, because every time he's in the lineup, most backup catchers, you'd say, well, it's not, not a value piece. He's just kind of in the lineup. But James McCann actually brings you something, even though he's hitting 203.
No,
he brings you something.
What you're saying is that you don't oversell it. You don't try to suggest that James McCann has been a great player.
Right.
But you recognize that, that guy has to play.
Right.
And when that guy does play.
It's not a horrible thing.
Exactly right. You can do, I know the batting average is not great, but you can do worse. Right. And the knack for big hits. Right. Is there.
And regardless, it's better than what he did in New York.
100% is better than what he did in New York.
At the very least.
I'm telling you, the pitchers all recognize it.
Like that.
Every single one of them recognize the value of what James McCann has brought to them.
And frankly, he throws out runners better than Adley Rutschman.
That's probably true. But I'm standing by. Fire. I don't know where you are with the ABS challenge argument.
I'm mixed.
So I do. Gavin Sheets, Kyle Gibson, we ran by both of them last week, again, because of the St. Louis, the thing that happened in St. Louis. And they both said challenge system, not for ABS. And they both made compelling. Gavin Sheets' argument is the one that I've talked about a lot. I don't think the hitters want ABS because, again, any ball that touches any slight part of the zone is now a strike. So you're essentially expanding the strike zone by the size of a baseball the entire way. Kyle Gibson's argument is because of that, he thinks they're going to artificially make the strike zone smaller, in order to overcompensate for the fact that any ball that touches any part of the strike zone now becomes a strike. So he doesn't want it either. So now I got both a hitter and a pitcher who are both saying I don't want that. And part of it, I also think, in the sense that I got talking, you adjust to it. You get used to. Sometimes you like someone's strike zone better than you like someone else's strike zone.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing for you that day. I like this guy's strike zone. I know exactly how to manipulate it. Yeah. I know exactly what to do.
Well, I think the variability aspect of what we have now and the human element of it is going to be completely lost. There will be no variability anymore. And that's something that you're going to have to grapple with, obviously. So I don't know. I'm mixed on it because I think there is such a human element to sports and human element to baseball. But then again, you make a good point. Tennis is already using stuff like this. There are a lot of different sports using technology. And if we have it, maybe we should use it.
One of the arguments I've made, we got to take a break. I'm sorry. This is going to end up being one of those days where I got to squeeze all the breaks into 1 hour. One of the arguments that I made is that baseball, it's particularly a bad look for the sport. There's no sport that has to deal with this.
Totally.
Again, try to explain to an alien how the sport works. Well, you see that box there? If the ball's in that box, it's a strike. If it's not, it's a...
Right.
And then you sit down and have that person watch. And I use the term alien, but it really does become someone who's trying to learn the game, someone who's trying to get into the game, watches and says, wait, I thought you said that the rule was... The hell are the rules of this game? I don't understand. No sport... I get there's a lot that happens on a football play, but, you're not looking at holding on every... We think that they also often miss holding in football games.
It's like every play, though.
Right?
Every play.
But you're not focused on it. It's not the thing that you're looking for. In baseball, on every pitch, you're looking at where was that ball in relation to that white box that I see on the screen.
But the white box might be the problem in itself.
I understand, and we've talked about that, although we've largely accepted it more and more. I think the technology has gotten better, and we've accepted it more and more over the years. But you're right. It's not – it's like the way we used to describe the yellow marker on the screen in football, right? Remember, that's not official. Over the years, it's gotten more and more official, right? It's rarer and rarer that yellow marker is –
it's pretty good.
It's pretty damn. That technology is outstanding. So it's a tough look for baseball. It's not the. Yeah. It's every time somebody says umpiring is a very difficult thing to do. Yes, 1,000%. And that, to me, is in part the argument for this. It might be too difficult. And it's unfair that you're getting judged by every single ball strike miss that's this close, and that balls that are being thrown at ungodly speeds. The hitters can't see it. So I am in favor of full-on ABS. Yeah, I will accept the challenge system just as an improval upon what you have right now. Like, that appears to be where it's – within 5 years, I think there will be a challenge system that exists within baseball.
I think it's a happy medium. Yeah.
I think that's ultimately – it's the easiest thing for them to do.
Right. For
them to address the fact that the umpires are going to fight about it, and they have a fairly powerful union, and that not every player wants full-on automated balls and strikes. In order to address it and show progress, I think they will end up going to a challenge system. Then they'll have to fight about how many challenges. Is it one per at-bat? Is it one per – you don't really want it to add time to the game because that's been a very good thing for the sport the last couple of years.
One per at-bat would be horrendous.
Well, not all of them would be used, right? Like, it's not like everybody would use one per at-bat. And then the question is, how quickly can you get it? Because if it's as quick as, immediately you're told – the umpire's told it was a ball or a strike, then it shouldn't really add all that much.
Keep it going, yeah.
Like, at that point, you're talking about adding, like a minute? If it's 2 seconds each time,
right,
and there's 30 challenges during the game,
yeah, that's a good point.
You've added 1 minute to the game. That's not the end of the world, but it's got to be that quick. If it's not that quick, if it involves putting something up on the screen and taking a second, then you're talking about it being like 5 to 6 seconds per challenge.
Right.
And now, yes, you're right. It probably can't be one per at-bat.
I'd probably settle at one per inning.
Then who gets to use it, right? Like it becomes I think that's when it becomes a bigger problem. Is this hitter allowed to use it, or do the hitters? Do they not get to make the call themselves?
That would be my idea. I would say the manager has to make the call,
and that's tricky, right? Like
that is tricky.
The hitter definitely has a better view of the ball than the manager does. So,
right, but maybe there's some kind of system they can have. The TV broadcast in the dugout or something.
Yeah, something like that tells them.
I don't know.
I don't know the answer either. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
You're right, though. If you're a manager looking in from the side, you're not going to have the best perspective.
That's what I'm saying.
It's tough.
Like, the hitter seems to be the guy that should be the one. And by the way, hitters have it wrong, too. How many times do we watch someone screaming about a strike 3 call where you're like, dude, that was a strike. Like, that ball was in the zone, man. So it's not like they would get it right every time either. All right. Hour number 1 is in the books. When we come back in, Maryland lost the NCAA Lacrosse Championship yesterday. We will talk about that. And just the run that was of them getting there, which is wild, with our buddy Patrick Stevens. So that's on the way as we start hour number 2 here on GCR. Hey, O's fans, on Saturday, June 1st, cheer on the Orioles as they take on the Tampa Bay Rays at Oriole Park at Camden Yards at 4:05. The first 25,000 fans 15 and over will receive an Anthony Santander walk-off bobblehead presented by Royal Farms. Come out early. Gates will open 2 hours prior to the first pitch for Early Bird Saturdays with happy hour, live music, and more. Don't miss all the action and excitement of an evening out at the yard. Buy your tickets today at Orioles.com/tickets.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hagerstown, Maryland. A snapshot of American history that dates back centuries. Today, the roots of the city expand with another historical moment, the grand opening of Meredith Park, Hagerstown's new event stadium and home to the Atlantic League Flying Boxcars. Experience the energy, culture, and adventure. Plan your getaway today at America's newest and most innovative ballpark. You're welcome in Hagerstown, Maryland. Visit Hagerstown.com.
Hungry? With 7 locations throughout Maryland, Glory Days Grill is always right around the corner. They have wings, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and drinks to satisfy everyone, as well as tons of televisions and sound delivered right to your phone. Glory Days is the best place to watch football or whatever your favorite sport is. While you're there, be sure to check out Goose Flights Lager, named in honor of legendary Raven Tony Goose Siragusa. $2 of every can is donated to the Goose Flights Foundation. Glory Days Grill. Great food, good sports.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
Well, actually, today it's Zack Goodman who's in for Griffin. And so, yeah, you good?
I had no idea the commercial ended that early. I wasn't paying attention at all, and I'm like, oh, he's trying to talk. Okay.
Talking about other things. All right, into hour number 2, Patrick Stevens will join us in just 1 second. We'll talk about the NCAA back-to-back NCAA Lacrosse Championship for Notre Dame. Yeah, you can go ahead and give him a call. As they won yesterday over Maryland, 15-5 up in Philadelphia. Also, still to come this hour, we're going to celebrate the life of Bill Walton, as Len Elmore, Maryland legend, will join us, and a longtime friend of Bill Walton's will check in to share some memories. Some news this morning. Jordan Schultz reports that Tony Jefferson, the former Ravens safety, would like to come out of retirement and play again this season. I don't know, man. God bless him. I wish him well. He interned with the Ravens a year ago in the scouting department. Somebody would say, hey, the Ravens seem to be in the market for a safety. I don't think that this is the answer.
It sounds like a poor idea.
Yeah. I just think that's... I mean, I don't know if he wanted to come run around in camp or whatever. I don't think that I would be making plans for Tony Jefferson at this point in his career. But, again, according to Jordan Schultz, Tony Jefferson would like to come out of retirement and would like to play this season. He words it as he plans to play this upcoming season. I don't know if that means that he has a team that's interested or if he's just trying to draw interest and create interest, but that's the report this morning. All right, yes, in Philadelphia yesterday after the rains and the storms came through, more storms came from Maryland in the form of a really good Notre Dame team that won the NCAA championship with a 15-5 victory. Joining us now to put the finishing touches on college sports season, he is our friend, USA Lacrosse Magazine. You follow him on Twitter at Discourse, D1S Course. He's Patrick Stevens. Patrick, good morning. How are you, sir?
I am trying to rest up here.
Yeah, busy.
So it was a very busy weekend, to say the least. But another lacrosse season in the books, and Notre Dame obviously a plenty-worthy champion after plowing through the field.
I don't really know what else there is to say other than I think we all knew this was possible, and I think we talked about it a couple times, that Notre Dame just might be that much better and that much, to me, deeper than all of the other teams were in this field, which didn't make them like infallible or that it was impossible. I just think that it was always a chance they just might be that much better than everybody else.
And just as importantly, they were that much more consistent than anybody else. Like, they played at a pretty similar level game in and game out. Even in their worst game, their only loss, they lost in overtime. So, and I think we talked about it before. I don't think that the top teams in the country, we didn't have like a group of super teams like last year with Duke and Virginia and Notre Dame. And it was obvious, as that season unfolded, that it was going to be one of those three teams that ultimately won it. This year, Duke was never remotely consistent. They were the anti-Notre Dame in that way. And Virginia just couldn't solve its defensive problems. Although the interesting thing was that in the end, it was Maryland keeping Virginia out of transition and really bottling them up at the offensive end that ultimately did the Cavaliers in. But Notre Dame, the depth in particular, you look at what happened yesterday, and I wrote a little bit about it going into the game, and it immediately played out this way. They got 4 goals while their second midfield was on the field. They got 2 goals when their third midfield was on the field. I think those guys combined, those 6 players, totaled like 5 goals and 4 assists or something to that effect. That's just really incredible depth, and it's hard for anybody to replicate that, and it's really hard to deal with it when you're playing for the second time in 3 days. I mean, Notre Dame just had a lot more gas in the tank in addition to being a better team.
Yeah, I don't think Maryland can blame this one on playing the second semifinal on Saturday.
No, that game could have been delayed till today, and
right.
It probably wouldn't have been mattered. And you know what? Like this, and I wrote a little bit about it yesterday. Like this was the kind of game that reminded you a little bit of some of those earlier Tillman era teams that pretty much maxed out and got to Memorial Day and they were just overmatched. I mean, you think about the team that lost 9-3 to Loyola in 2012, the team that lost to Denver 10-5 in 2015. I mean, those were games that were settled pretty early, and it was clear that Maryland probably didn't have as much gas in the tank and probably just didn't match up very well. And the same thing happened here. This is now they end up with the most lopsided title game since 1998. I think that to me the only surprising thing is that it was quite so lopsided. These sort of underwhelming title games have a way of ending up like 11-7 and 9-3 and 10-5 and 9-6. And so Notre Dame being able to do all that it did to create that much separation is a really impressive showing.
So, as far as Maryland's concerned, I think there's no way to look. It's whenever you reach a national championship game and you lose, it's always going to be disappointing. But yeah, there was no world in which they were supposed to be here. Like, it's nuts.
No, and I think that if you go back 3 weeks, there was a real chance that you were looking at this team's legacy as being really the most underwhelming Maryland team in a long time.
Right.
A team that was 8-5, a team that had lost 5 of its last 9 going into the tournament, a team that didn't really have a centerpiece on offense. They had certain pieces, most notably Ajax Zapatello and Luke Weirman, who you could argue were the best at their position in the country. And everything else was basically a bunch of complementary pieces. And that's probably a little unfair to a handful of guys. Like Eric Spanos had a fabulous season. And you kind of look at a few of the other guys on that team had really good years. But it was those 2 dudes that were really kind of carrying the banner there in a lot of ways. And for them to go, and instead of being the team that, lost in the second round for the second year in a row, and suddenly you're looking at a situation where they haven't won an NCAA tournament game since they had that perfect run 2 years ago. Well, now you've got something that you can use as a springboard. But the other thing you can do is you can look at that and say down the road, like, yeah, maybe the regular season didn't go all that great, but there's some guys that were able to summon some really good performances. You think about the postseason Daniel Kelly had. You think about Ryan Siracusa, basically the whole season for him, kind of turning into a guy who he had 8 goals in his career in 4 years before this year. And this year puts up like 21, 22, and has a point in every game. You think about the short stick defensive midfield unit that had an awesome game against Virginia in particular. A lot for Maryland to build on moving forward, although there are a fair number of pieces that will be moving on after this season.
And I wanted to get to the look ahead part, and I know that this is far more difficult in this era where you still don't know if somebody just might be leaving because they just might be leaving. But to your point, obviously it starts with like Luke Weirman and Logan McNaney, and that's a whole hell of a lot. Oh, and Ajax Zapatello too, right? Like, that's a lot to be losing for this Maryland team.
They're not going to be losing McNaney because he had the red shirt.
I forgot. That's right. He got the extra year because of the injury. Okay,
so,
my fault.
So
My
one of the things that they have going for them next year, theoretically, is they'll have McNaney and Brian Ruppel, the goalie who stepped in for McNaney last year. So, this year they basically needed McNaney to stay healthy and avoid having to kind of burn the redshirt year that Ruppel was supposed to have last year. And so now you've got two goalies to work with. So that's something that you got to think about. But to your point, like losing the player of the year according to the USILA and Zappatello, big loss. Losing Weirman, who think about this. Like Weirman went ahead and won 17 out of 24 faceoffs yesterday against a dude that was number 1 in the country in faceoff percentage, and it still didn't get Maryland any closer than 10 goals.
Yeah.
Weirman was a monster throughout the postseason at over 71%, and obviously a major piece of that team 2 years ago that ran the table. So that I think might be as big a loss as any that Maryland has to deal with, because their ability to flip possession and tilt the field in their favor over the last 3 years has really bought them a cushion on a lot of fronts. And in 2022, it bought them a cushion in terms of, well, now you're going to go win games by 6 or 7 that maybe you otherwise would have been winning by 3 or 4. And the last 2 years, it kept them in games that they probably otherwise would have been losing by 3 or 4 goals.
The as far as like the legacy and where like particularly the Kavanaugh brothers, like this isn't, we still don't see this a lot, right? Like I don't know the Virginia thing because it was weird with the COVID year, but like we still don't see defended titles consistently. How do we speak about now the legacy of this Notre Dame group and particularly Pat Kavanaugh and the Kavanaugh brothers?
Well, you go back since Princeton's three-peat in the 90s, 96, 97, 98. This is the third team to win titles in back-to-back years.
Right.
You had Syracuse in 08 and 09. You had Duke in 13 and 14, and now you've got this Notre Dame team. It's interesting. People were trying to talk about this particular team as an all-timer, and I still believe that last year's Notre Dame team was better than this year's Notre Dame team, even if that team lost a couple times. I just thought that the overall collection of talent was a little bit better. But if we're talking about a 2-year team, these guys hold up pretty well. And they hold up pretty well compared to both of those, both that Syracuse back-to-back and that Duke back-to-back. The depth is impressive. The thing with Notre Dame that you always knew, they'd always have a great goalie, and Lee Menteman certainly further cemented his place as one of the great postseason goalies. And defensively, always a really sound scheme. Chris Kavanaugh obviously came on and had a breakout year. His brother mentioned yesterday that a year ago he was basically just kind of a goal scorer, and this year he was a table setter in so many ways. And in addition to being able to have a monster postseason as a scorer, the 5-goal games against Maryland and against Georgetown in the quarterfinals. So certainly, as a multi-year thing, this was an impressive stretch for Notre Dame, and they obviously lose a fair bit. Just starting with Pat Kavanaugh and Liam Entenman, that's a lot to lose right there. But it's a program that, because of all that depth, you're sitting there thinking that they're certainly going to be in the conversation when 2025 rolls around.
All right. Well, I guess before we play the game for the final time, is there anything else that you have your eye on as the summer now begins for you? I think this has been not a particularly active coaching off season in lacrosse, right?
Yeah, I mean, to this point, we've seen John Torpy, the longtime High Point coach, take the job at Brown, and Marquette promoted Jake Richard after moving on from Andrew Stemmel. So there's a couple other jobs that are open at this point. High Point still has to find a new coach. Detroit has an opening, and I'm trying. I think there's somebody else that has an opening at this point. So at this stage, it's a relatively quiet. I think it'll be fun to see what the John Torpy style translates at Brown. I mean, he's a guy that has some Ivy League experience. He was at Dartmouth early in his career as an assistant. But and obviously, you could make the joke, if things go well, maybe he's the next coach at Virginia, because Tom Starcy and Lars Tiffany both had great runs at Brown and parlayed that into the Virginia job. But I don't think Lars is going anywhere anytime soon in Charlottesville, by the way. So I think with that's kind of an interesting thing to watch, because I do think that Brown is a program that believes, and rightfully so, that it should be in the mix in the Ivy League on a regular basis. So. But right now, kind of quiet, and we'll certainly see if any surprises happen to come up. I think it was, a couple of years ago, the Syracuse job opened after the Final Four,
right.
I believe. So, I mean, you have these things. Last year, Dartmouth opened late, and Virginia assistant Sean Kerwin took that. Then Lehigh opened as a result of that because Kevin Cassis went to take Kerwin's job. So, June, I think, is kind of the moving time, maybe even more so than May is typically in the sport.
All right, sir. Well, let's play our game. Oh, and I assume at some point UMES will probably hire a basketball coach, but I don't know that. Maybe there's a chance.
Man, to have no coach and no players, and it's after Memorial Day.
Weird.
Man, that's a rough spot for Maryland Eastern Shore.
But I saw it was announced last week they're going to play at Maryland. I don't know who scheduled the game. I don't know who could possibly have scheduled the game, but they're going to play at Maryland.
Well, it was probably scheduled sometime this past season.
Probably. So. All right, let's play the game one more time. Can Patrick Stevens name the MLB teams that this player has played for or managed, or in this case, both? And we begin with the split one, manager and player. He played for 4 teams. He managed 3 teams. There is crossover on one of those teams. Former catcher turned manager, 6 combined teams for A.J. Hinch.
A.J. Hinch. Well, the managerial teams are Arizona.
Yep.
And Houston.
Yep.
And Detroit.
And he played for Detroit in 2003. So there are 3 more teams that he played for.
A.J. Hinch, Oakland Athletic?
Most certainly.
A.J. Hinch, Philadelphia Philly?
He certainly was in 2004, and a 2-year stop, 2001 to 2002.
2001 to 2002 for A.J. Hinch. Well, since this is the last time we're doing this, let's just, for old time's sake, throw out the Dodgers.
It's certainly a worthy guess. It was the Kansas City Royals. The Kansas City Royals was the other stop. Active 5-team guy, 2-time All-Star. I did not know this. 2-time Gold Glove winner. And certainly a guy who has struck out a time or two. Joey Gallo is next on the list.
Joey Gallo with Texas.
Yep.
With Minnesota.
Yes.
With the Yankees.
Yep.
With Washington.
Currently, and he spent a little bit of 2022. After he started with the Yankees, he ended up.
Where did Joey Gallo burn off the rest of that season? That's a good question.
It didn't go well, for the record.
Okay. Well,
part of the problem here.
Part of the problem is that it did not go well, huh? Let's throw the Cubs out there.
It's not the Cubs. You're gonna kick yourself.
It was the Dodgers?
It was the Dodgers. It was the Dodgers in this one. And then the last one for the year, we wrap up. 4 teams for this former second baseman and slugger, a 3-time All-Star, and a Silver Slugger winner, Dan Uggla, the final on our list.
Well, Dan Uggla was definitely a Marlin and a Brave.
He knocked out the majority of it.
Yeah, he had a Washington cameo,
he did.
right?
Finished up in Washington, and then in 2014, he was a acquisition of this team from the Braves. He was released by the Braves because he was hitting 162 at that point, and he was signed by this team.
And he was signed. Point.
It's not the Yankees. This is so much worse. He played 4.
It was the Dodgers again?
No, he played 4 games for them. 4, I'm sorry. I didn't even get 4 games. 4 games. But he got a World Series ring.
So he played for the Giants
in
2014.
He played for the Giants for 4 games and got a World Series ring out of the deal. He was
for those of you who love a certain game,
it's a good
pairing
one.
Pairing the Giants with one of those 3 teams, that's a great one to know.
You're on the grid. You better remember that Dan Uggla had 4 games with the Giants because it'll work out for you. Patrick, always appreciate you, man. Once again this year, taking the time every week to spend with us during basketball and lacrosse season. Cannot wait for us to get back around for a Hoops preview show next year. And obviously you and I will talk plenty during the course of the summer. Love you, buddy. Appreciate you. Thanks for doing it all year long.
Awesome, Glenn. You have a great summer.
It's Patrick Stevens at Discourse, D1S Course on Twitter. USA Lacrosse Magazine and Washington Post with us every week during college basketball and college lacrosse season. Appreciate him doing that. And, there's not – I am writing actually at the press box today about Maryland lacrosse and why it was interesting to me, even with them losing yesterday, how much consensus there seemed to be amongst the people that I talked to within the sport that, like, this run this year kind of proved that John Tillman is the best coach in the sport. That was a really fascinating thing. Anish Shroff was on with us last week, and Paul Carcaterra, I was talking to him the other day. Like, it was wild to me how in a year where Maryland went 8-5, and was pedestrian, this ended up being the year that for so many people proved that John Tillman's the best coach in the sport. So I wrote about that today for Pressbox. You'll be able to read it at pressboxonline.com. But, yeah, not much to say about yesterday. It was it was rough. That was a rough day. Thankfully, the baseball game was on at the same time. Really, like, I thought I was going to be struggling because I was out at the pool with the kids, and I had, like, one phone going and the iPad going. And I was like, oh, this is going to be difficult. Nope, wasn't difficult at all. I was able to bail and just say, well, can put my focus on this and nothing else. So that's the way that it goes. All right. And the basketball last night, it's a real bummer for the Pacers because they were competitive throughout the course of that series. Like, 3 games that they had great chances of winning. Only game 2 really didn't go their way. It's kind of shameful that they lost game 1 of the series and both games in Indianapolis, despite not having Tyrese Halliburton. They were right there in both of them. But sweep's a sweep. Like, there's no way around it. You don't get to say, hey, but the games were close. No, it's a sweep. Boston largely untested. Yes, they've lost 2 games, but that's 2 games that they've lost. They've gone 12-2 to this point in the playoffs. From a health standpoint, getting Kristaps Porzingis back, I thought that the winner of the Western Conference would have an advantage over Boston because I just thought that team would be better than Boston. But Boston being so untested and healthy going into the finals, it obviously appears as though it's going to be Boston-Dallas. I do think that should be a compelling series. The NBA has got to be kicking themselves. So the NBA Finals don't start until next Thursday, no matter what. So there's a real chance that the Western Conference Finals could end tonight, and there will be no basketball for 9 days. 9 days. That everybody just be waiting for the start of the NBA Finals. It's a real – that's a tough look. And that's just the way it goes. Like, they schedule it out with the network, and they schedule it out with the arenas, and – that's the way it is. That's when the NBA Finals are starting. They don't move them up. It doesn't work that way. And that's no different than, like, in baseball, they announce sometime late in the season, right? They announce what the dates are for the World Series, right?
Yeah. I believe it's like September, I think.
Yeah, and that's just when it is.
Right.
If the championship series end early, that's what it is. The World Series is starting on this date. That's not uncommon or weird. It's what basically every sport does. You just don't usually have a week and a half where there isn't anything being played. And unless the Timberwolves start winning games, that's going to end up being the case in the NBA, where there's going to be a long wait between now and the start of the NBA Finals, and there's just not a whole lot that you can do about that. Watch baseball. That's what you're going to have. The only night that it would be a bummer to me would be Thursday night because the Orioles aren't playing, right? Like, so I could use a basketball game on Thursday night when I'm home just to have something else to watch. I guess there will be hockey, and I have not watched any playoff hockey. Not a single game. I tapped out, man. Sorry. Losing the Coyotes is painful for me. Like, I'm a Coyotes fan, so I don't know. It's just been hockey. It's been a painful year for me for hockey, and I just have not spent any time with it. None. Zero. Zilch. And I love playoff hockey. Like, playoff hockey is incredible.
I haven't either. So,
but you're not a hockey.
I got nothing to say.
You're not really
I'm not a
person,
hockey
right?
fan.
Are you an NBA person at all?
A little bit. I don't really pay that much attention. I go to a lot of Wizards games because I live down there and I'm near the stadium.
You're the one. You're the one person going to Wizards games.
Yeah, it's fun and it's very cheap. So for an NBA game,
you're not going to check out the Mystics this summer, are you? Do that?
I don't know. Maybe
that brunch deal. That
maybe.
They're doing? You see that?
No, I haven't seen this.
They're doing like a deal where it's like $100 for like a courtside ticket with an all-you-can-eat brunch.
It's pretty
on
good.
A Sunday, and I think it's bottomless like mimosas on top of it too. Dude,
sounds fun.
Like that actually seems like a heck of a way. I'm not going to be driving down to D.C. That's not going to happen. And
I feel like they don't even play in Capital One,
They
though.
don't.
They play in
moved a couple-
Virginia, right?
No, it's in the district.
It's in the district.
They
okay.
built another building for the G League team,
Okay.
and for
Okay.
it's in the district, but they are moving. Not only the Fever game is going to be played at Capital One, but also the Chicago Sky game, because that's where Angel Reese is. So
Okay.
the games against Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese
Yeah.
are both going to be played in the big.
See, I would go to
arena.
that.
100%.
Absolutely would go to that.
100%.
Yeah.
And I want to say that the Fever game might already be sold out.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe. But I was actually talking to a buddy of mine about going down for the Chicago Sky game.
Yeah,
to
that
see
would
Angel
be
Reese.
fun for sure.
I was talking about that. I don't care about the Washington Mystics. Sorry, I'm not a Washington sports. It doesn't do a thing for me. If you are, God bless you. I'm over that fight. It's not even a tribal thing anymore where I'm like, yeah, screw them, Baltimore. Yeah,
Well, I do go to a lot of Nats games, actually. Like, I've been to more Nats games this year than I have O's.
Well, okay, but that's geographical.
Geographical, right.
It's
It's
geographical
a few minutes
because you
away from
live-
work, but I'm done, and I can metro over, and it's easy.
Zach works
So-
and lives down there
Yeah, it's
nowadays.
easy.
So is that because somebody was in town that you wanted to see, or
just meeting
just
friends
for-
there
okay.
and just having fun.
Okay.
So,
All right.
and the Nats, I mean, I don't dislike them. I think like most other Orioles fans do. I don't really care. They're
No,
National League team.
I
It's
don't.
whatever.
I would agree with you. I am utterly indifferent with
Yeah.
with other than the annoying. The only part of it that's annoying is like we used to all get annoyed by like the mixed Masson broadcast they would do. Like that
I agree
was
with that.
annoying AF,
Yeah.
and I'm still annoyed by like the. Just make Masson or Masson 2 the Orioles and the Nationals. Like the
Right,
thing where you got to
right.
move around and figure out every night when I go to the app and I got to remember which one I got to click on in order
I'm
to
a
find the
Fubo
game.
user now. I'm a
Okay,
Fubo user.
all right.
Which is way too expensive, by the way.
Because
way too expensive.
Is that the only one that Masson
Yes.
went on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Only streaming apps. So, but it's good. I mean, you're 15 seconds behind, maybe 30. So I'll get the notification on my phone that something happens, and then I'll find out about it.
I don't feel bad about it. I would pay over the top, but I don't have the choice, and we don't have cable.
Yeah.
Where I live in a rural area,
Okay.
so like it's what it is. So I use my father's sign.
Yeah,
that's what I.
But
do.
with Fubo, I mean, it's like $110 a month or something.
Okay.
and you get everything. I get golf too. I get baseball, so it's not bad. It's
But you still have
probably
to pay
cheaper than cable.
You still have
would
to
be.
pay for like Netflix and that stuff on
Oh,
top
yeah,
of that.
for sure,
That's the
for
problem.
sure.
The problem
Yeah.
is that's why I'm not gonna go back to cable because
right.
I will never do it. Now all these like the cable like bundles they're trying to put together for the streamers, I'm listening because I want to have Netflix and I want to have Apple and I want to have. I had to do it again. I had to sign up for Apple again on Friday and cancel it after the baseball game.
I'm waiting for this like subscription craze to die down a little bit though, because right now it's absurd. You've got like 15 to watch anything. You need like 15 different subscriptions. It's crazy.
think that'll ultimately be like 8. I think that'll
that'd
end
be
up
better.
being the number.
Be better.
It'll be something like 8, and then I think the real question will be how many of the teams go over the top, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah. Eventually, it'll all be
because
that way.
at some point. The Orioles, I think, will be over the top, or Masson, or whatever it'll end up being, will be over the top.
But there's the absurdity of, the NFL, for example, going
Yes.
on these exclusively streamed games, which is horrible for the sport, in my opinion. I think it's horrible.
I understand the way you feel. We can't do this right now. Save it. We'll get back to it.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Bill Walton next. Len Elmore is going to join us on the other side. Zach's here. Today's show, or don't forget, it's Monday, so Stan, Ross, and Luke are getting together a little bit later on today. Oh, no, it's not Monday. Today's Tuesday. So they didn't do that show this week. I forgot it was a holiday. Stan and Eric Garfield on Thursday. Next Monday, Stan, Ross, and Luke will get back together. Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. Len Elmore joins us next. Remember Bill Walton here on GCR.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Discover one of Baltimore's hidden gems at Guilford Hall Brewery. Enjoy dinner in our spacious brew pub, sip a signature cocktail in our outdoor dog-friendly beer garden, or take a tour of our brewery. Discover your new favorite local craft beer. From crisp lagers to hoppy ales, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Pair your brew with delicious appetizers and entrees. There are options for the whole family, but you have to try our fan favorite giant pretzel. Guilford Hall Brewery, where every sip is a celebration. Visit us online at guilfordhall.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis. AJMichaels.com.
Hungry? With 7 locations throughout Maryland, Glory Days Grill is always right around the corner. They have wings, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and drinks to satisfy everyone, as well as tons of televisions and sound delivered right to your phone. Glory Days is the best place to watch football or whatever your favorite sport is. While you're there, be sure to check out Goose Flights Lager, named in honor of legendary Raven Tony Goose Siragusa. $2 of every can is donated to the Goose Flights Foundation. Glory Days Grill. Great food, good sports.
Hey, O's fans, on Saturday, June 1st, cheer on the Orioles as they take on the Tampa Bay Rays at Oriole Park at Camden Yards at 4:05. The first 25,000 fans 15 and over will receive an Anthony Santander walk-off bobblehead presented by Royal Farms. Come out early. Gates will open 2 hours prior to the first pitch for Early Bird Saturdays with happy hour, live music, and more. Don't miss all the action and excitement of an evening out at the yard. Buy your tickets today at Orioles.com/tickets.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
All right, back in here on GCR's continue along on a Tuesday edition of the program. And, the sports world lost an absolute giant. Not just, like literal because of his size, but a true titan as Bill Walton passed away yesterday. And truth be told, I did not know about the relationship that Bill shared with our next guest. And Len Elmore shared this video that the two of them had done before the Maryland-UCLA game last season, and it was really special. And I spent about 30 minutes of my night watching this last night. And I wanted to talk to Len Elmore a little bit more about his relationship with Bill Walton this morning. Of course, Maryland legend Len Elmore with us here on GCR. Len, I'm sorry that most of our conversations these days seem to be in these circumstances, but I always appreciate you taking the time for us.
Obviously if it can be enlightenment, then certainly I'm all for it. But honestly, Glenn, I'm not sure there's anything I can add that people haven't added about Bill.
I know, Len, I did not know, though, some of the parts of this conversation that were so fascinating to me, like the reverence that you had for Bill Walton and that you spent like an entire summer studying film and watching Bill Walton play in preparation for going up against him.
Well, I mean, look, during that period, he was the standard. I'm one that didn't want to get embarrassed. So, if I did, I would have no excuses. But, he, particularly that game where, 21 or 22 from the field. And I mean, it was just otherworldly. And, I just knew that I had to do something to match up with him. It paid off to a point. Obviously we lost by 1 and he admits he played horribly. He shot horribly, but he didn't give me enough credit. I had something to do with it. But we joke about that all the time.
I actually appreciated you guys going back and forth about it because, you guys still lost the game, but to the point, you handled your own, despite the fact that Like I like what you said, that was like your job was to try to get him away from the paint, and you couldn't, like you just couldn't get him away at all times.
Yeah, no, he knew his game. He knew the strength of his game, and certainly paid off.
I feel like, Len, there are many people of a younger generation that only know Bill Walton, the personality, that only know, the broadcaster or the larger-than-life figure, or, the Bill Walton experience, if you will. Can you enlighten the younger people about how, because you referenced the game against Memphis State, how truly dominant of a player Bill Walton really was?
I mean, to put it in today's terms is difficult, because he was consummate with some of the fundamentals, and I think a lot of that had to do with the program that he played in under John Wooden. Terrific drop step to the basket, adept with the hook shot, both left and right, but also could hit the bank shot, used the glass extremely well from his area, never ventured more than 10 feet from the basket. And you saw a lot of that in predecessor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, that was just part, and others who came after, like Sidney Wicks and Curtis Rowe. So that was part of the program. And, he mastered it extremely well. Against Memphis State at the time, I'm not sure they truly understood how to play defense. They certainly didn't watch the tape. That's for sure. But he was dominant because of his consistency in doing so, and and his attitude. Bill and I, before that UCLA game, we actually sat down. I sat in his little place, that was on Sam Gilbert's property. He was in like a smaller home, and we sat and talked before the game a little bit. That was interesting. We didn't know each other, except by reputation. So it was interesting to kind of talk. And when I talk about our friendship, it wasn't like, we got together with the wives and went out and everything, and we rarely crossed paths. But when we did, it was like, we hadn't left.
Wow.
So it was always good to visit with him. I can't pretend that I was as close to him as some of the other guys and people who have articulated tributes, but whenever we got together, there was always something that kept us connected.
I enjoyed you referring to his Italian bike too. Going to visit.
Oh yeah.
So Len Elmore is with us here on GCR. Len, twofold, because it's interesting you talking about that whatever level of relationship the two of you had. And interesting more because I think about the two of you, and I think a lot of people would say, hey, you're very different, right? Like Bill had this wild personality, whereas I think we think of you more of as a straight shooter. But I think the thing that jumped out immediately to me was you guys share a social conscience, right? And I wonder if that was part of what you connected about and how you were able to develop a friendship.
Yeah, I mean, our discussions, particularly early in those years, and even sometimes on the floor, kind of drifted towards, social justice, if you will. That's the terminology used today. But we both had an understanding of where we were as a nation, socially and politically, and certainly where we wanted to go or where we should be. Obviously, Bill much more. Much more recognized than I was. I had a much bigger platform than I did. Certainly could kind of carry the ball in that regard. But yeah, that's one of the areas that we talked about, on a periodic basis, and other things that were related to that. But that was all part of it. We certainly didn't necessarily have the absolute same taste in music. I did like the Dead, but that was his religion. So, but yeah, we touched on that, and even though we came from different backgrounds, me from the big city, him from a smaller town as in San Diego, we still had some of the same values.
How much did you appreciate? You referenced the platform that he had, the voice that he had, and that he almost like obsessively used it to speak up for some of the more marginalized folks. And Native Americans were a group that he spoke up about. How much did you appreciate that about Bill Walton, that as he became so much more than a basketball player and truly an iconic figure, that he continued to use that platform and that voice for marginalized folks?
Oh, obviously, very much. I mean, it was admirable. And, as I said, so many tributes have come in for Bill that there's not a whole lot I can add. I mean, there's many of them, to kind of describe him as the apex of social consciousness from somebody who has that type of platform and is willing to speak out and willing to be as articulate and as demonstrative as he was.
Len, going back to the game against UCLA, the way you guys spoke about it, the fact that it was, right, Lefty trying to make the UCLA of the East versus the actual UCLA, and it was kind of a show, but the way that you talked about even battling them the way that you all did, and ultimately the season that you had, is there almost like an inflection moment there in what Maryland basketball was becoming that you can date back to that day, that performance, the way that you all battled that UCLA team?
Well, I mean, Glenn, I don't know if you call it an inflection point. I think it was, kind of a balancing point for the program.
Okay.
I think we demonstrated that we belong. Losing by one at Pauley certainly said a lot, despite the fact that it was a loss. And I think had we won, it might have completely changed our season. It might have completely, changed our attitudes towards the game itself and our attitudes towards ourselves, and maybe in a successful way going forward and playing NC State, who was our arch nemesis during that period of time. But it didn't happen. We lost, and certainly, as I said, I feel sorry for the teams to follow that loss, which made a lot of sense. We went on a nice streak until we did wind up losing State. But that was a point where we certainly believe we belong. I think Maryland, the program, got on the map. Maybe we backed into it. I don't know, but it was certainly placed on the map now. And being one of the top 4 teams in the nation the whole season, it made a lot of sense. The sad part about it was we couldn't complete the journey because the NC State, which was ultimate national champion, were in our conference, and only one team could leave that conference and go to the tournament, which is crazy to have the number 3 team in the nation not playing the NCAA tournament.
Len, I spent a lot of time with young people talking about when Lefty passed, like, hey, you don't understand what should have been accomplished in this era, but the rules, it's just what it was. Len, if I could, because again, I acknowledge what you're saying, that you think there are other people that were closer, but the relation that you had, and I'll tell you, I worked in Arizona for a couple of years, and did some Pac-12 stuff, and Bill's kindness blew me away. Like his willingness to come on, you and I have talked many times over the years. Bill Walton would be happily to come on local radio shows and would give you as much time as he needed. Can you speak at all to, again, given his stature, given his, relevance culturally, how kind he continued to be to so many people throughout the course of his life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just his basic personality. Interestingly enough, he probably recognized his legacy. And after his playing days is when he fully blossomed, I think.
Yeah.
I think during the time he played, he was still a pro athlete. He was still struggling with injuries. Myself and others all recognized how difficult it was to play with sets of injuries, and to recognize that. But once his career ended, he certainly found his niche. It's interesting. I was in law school. He was still playing with the Celtics. He actually lived in Cambridge. And so, we'd brush by each other periodically as well. And again, it was a lot different once he stopped playing and started to, recognize not only what the world meant to him, but also what he meant to the world.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. Len, it's actually funny. I'm thinking about it now, and I feel like it's hard for me to even imagine and remember Bill Walton, the player, separated from the personality, because I feel like a lot of people would say, well, he was just always like this, right? Like, was he on the floor, like, going on about, mountains and vistas? And, like, it is wild to me to think about, like, that was probably not the Bill Walton that you were going up against. Like, the conversations probably were not like that when you were on the floor with him.
No, they weren't.
There wasn't a lot of unicorn talk when you were going up against.
Bill could, he could talk as well as anybody when he was on the floor.
I love that, man. I love that. I wish that I could go back and relive some of that. That would be tremendous. Len, I really appreciate you doing this, and I think that it's so much more global, right? Even beyond your own relationship, I think that you understand what all of basketball is feeling, in that, like, this was it was in a way a connective tissue for an entire sport. Everyone truly loved this man and every opportunity that they had to have him in their lives.
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, I could only hope and pray that people would speak of me even in a fraction of the terms that they speak of Bill, because, obviously his impact, whether you knew him or not, his impact was strong and lasting. And I just don't know, what else can be said that hasn't already been said.
Len, I really appreciate you doing this. Look forward to just talking some hoops with you the next time we have this conversation. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure, Len.
The great Len Elmore, of course, Maryland icon, speaking about a basketball icon. I do not have many I mean, I will tell you that Bill Walton, when I was working in Phoenix, and that was only for a couple of years, I remember being given I wish I could tell you who it was that gave me Bill Walton's number. But Arizona State basketball was not very good. Arizona was good, so, like, but actually during that time they were going through a little bit of a dip. I think Lute Olson had some health issues that he was dealing with. But it was always a reminder, hey, just call. I was very fortunate. I actually have Charles Barkley stories. Like, I spent time with Charles Barkley in Arizona, and he was very close friends with one of my co-hosts, and I have a lot of it's more personal for me when I talk about Charles Barkley, who to me is, like, he and Bill Walton are the two most beloved figures in the history of the sport. Figures, not necessarily like, LeBron James, the player, everyone gravitated towards. Michael Jordan, the player, everyone gravitated towards. Maybe Shaquille O'Neal is close to the conversation.
I was going to mention him. I think he's getting up there. Yeah.
He's in that conversation with Bill Walton and with Charles Barkley, but, like, as figures, every time they did something, you paid attention. Bill Walton and Charles Barkley to me have been the most special. And I've said that, like, John Madden to me is the greatest sports media personality of all time, right? But, like, Charles Barkley is encroaching in that territory. And Bill Walton ain't terribly far behind that group. I had a few conversations with Bill Walton, and you would have him on as a guest on your show, and you would have no idea, like, no clue where it was going. You would ask a question, and somehow 5 minutes later, I don't even remember the question that I asked. Like, I would have asked, hey, how's Herb Sendek doing at Arizona State? And somehow we would come back to, and, like, the way he would talk about Phoenix and, like, the valley and the basin and, like, the whole, it was so over the top, and I wouldn't even be able to follow it. And they would try to talk about the Suns, and, he would rave about Mike D'Antoni and Steve Nash. He loved Steve Nash.
That's awesome.
It was so cool just to talk to Bill Walton, but I didn't ever, like, I don't think I ever met I feel like that can't be true, that I had to have come across him at some point, but I don't remember ever interacting or meeting Bill Walton, so I don't have a personal story. He did. He was a guest on my show a few times, and I remember being stunned when I was given his number, and I was like, you want me to call Bill Walton? They're like, yeah, go ahead. He'll do it. I was like, really? I can just call him? Like, I don't have to call somebody else and say, can I get Bill Walton on the show? They're like, no, just call Bill Walton. I was like, all right. I remember calling him the first time, and I've seen a lot of that in the last 24 hours where people have been like, hey, I was working on a story, and I called Bill Walton, and he called me back 8 times because he remembered some other thing, and he wanted to share it with me. Like, I've seen so many of those stories.
Yeah.
Bill Walton was unbelievably kind. He would absolutely call. He would, in an era where people you would call somebody and leave a message, like it wasn't an era of texting. He would call back. He would say, Glenn, yes, I'd be happy. I'd love to come on with you. Like, and he would act like it was an honor for him. That I wanted him to appear on AM 1060 KDUS in Phoenix.
Well, one comment I have about this, I don't have a lot of experience with Bill Walton, to be fair.
Right.
But I can say that I think him and Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley, they come from a time where things were less divisive in a way. Like now it's LeBron James is living through right now the most divisive era. So maybe if LeBron James played in the 90s, early 2000s, like a Shaquille O'Neal, for example, things would be different and people would have a different view of him.
It's an interesting...
I just think things are, given social media and the way things are.
But what's fascinating about that is, like, Bill Walton was beloved. I don't see Bill Walton never hid from, like, his social beliefs. So we were just talking about that obviously with Len. Like, Bill Walton was absolutely someone who would speak up about those topics, and yet I don't believe that he was ever, like, in the crosshairs of the uber conservatives. Like, I don't think my conservative friend, like, I maybe I'd be wrong, but Tim in Bel Air is one of our regular listeners who I know is very conservative. Like, I don't think he would say, like, oh, I hated Bill Walton. Like, somehow it felt like despite him, and maybe because he didn't do it specifically about politicians, maybe it was like, I don't know, maybe somebody would point out and say, no, he loved Barack Obama. I don't know, but like, I feel like it was more about causes than it was about politicians.
That's fair.
With Bill Walton.
Yeah.
And I think most of us would, like, I don't care what I really don't care what your political inclinations are. Like, as long as you largely agree that, like, we should be good people and, do the right thing. As long as that's I'm largely not going to care mostly about what your political inclinations are. It felt like somehow he was above that. Like, that people, like, he was so beloved as a figure that people kind of didn't care what his, political inclinations were. And Barkley's been a little bit more outspoken about that in recent years.
I think so, yeah.
Like, he's become, but again, I don't know that it's been about candidates as much as it's been about causes. And I think it's easier for someone to say, hey, I'm cool with you having cause. I want you to have causes. I think it's a good thing to have causes. I just don't like being bashed over the head about, vote for this person as much.
Well, with LeBron James, it was the shut up and dribble thing for a little while. And I just don't know if that sort of thing... Again,
which is almost borderline insane.
It was borderline insane. But that was amplified by social media in every way possible.
Right.
And if this was... And Shaquille O'Neal, I guess his career bled into the era of social media a little bit. But... as far as Charles Barkley goes, as far as...
it is. I don't know that LeBron is as naturally entertaining as some of these other guys are.
I would agree with that.
And maybe that would be something that could come more in his post-playing career, because to Len Elmore's
But he's been
point,
in movies, though. Like, he was in that new Space Jam movie.
It feels forced, and it feels like the House Party remake that they did. Like, it feels forced. It feels very corporate. It doesn't feel... Like, I think one of the reasons why Barkley and Walton is it just never felt like you were talking to a corporation. Like, you just felt like that was that person is saying what that person believes, and they're genuinely funny. They're so genuinely pleasant and enjoyable to be around. And even Shaq is still a little bit rough around the edges. Like, Charles, I think, has brought a lot of that. It's funny because I think as a player, Shaq was more personable than he has been in his TV role. Like, his TV role is a little bit more gruff. Like, he's a little bit more like, I'm the Don Dada of big man. Like,
Gold Bond commercials.
The commercials are still. You're right. The commercials are still.
Some of them are rough. I don't know. Not great.
But it's weird that. You're right. Like, I just don't think LeBron has been universally embraced, and maybe some of it is the shut up and dribble thing. But I think a lot of it too is just he's not as naturally entertaining. I mean, Michael Jordan did a movie, and Michael Jordan's not a natural entertainer. It's funny because then we see Michael Jordan speak at Kobe Bryant's funeral, and it's like one of the most incredible things I've ever seen a human being do. Michael Jordan's eulogy at Kobe Bryant's funeral was so powerful. I think about it, when I deal with grief, I think about that, what he said, and the joke about the crying Jordan meme, like, here I am, it's going to be another meme all over again. Like, I thought it was so good the way that he handled himself that time. But Bill Walton, man, like, a conversation with Bill Walton was just a trip, dude. Like, it was a trip. No pun intended. Like, he just did not know where you were going. Like, he could take you anywhere during the course of that conversation.
Not sure he knew where he was going most of the time.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah.
A true icon. I mean, just an unbelievable figure. And I couldn't think of the right way to say it, and other people have said it. There is something about, like, this was the final weekend of the Pac-12. Like, this was the weekend that the Pac-12 ended, because the Pac-12 baseball tournament was over the weekend, and that's the final ever sporting event for the Pac-12. And Bill Walton loved the Pac-12, man. He loved that league. There's something I don't even know what ironic. That feels trite when you say ironic. Like, I don't know what the correct word is to describe, Bill Walton's passing coming right after the end of the league that he was so associated with, and he, went out of his way to try to put over and talk about for so long. But man, what a true legend. What an absolute legend and monumental figure within sports. Dude, did you remember a couple years ago? So he and Jason Benetti started doing college games together for ESPN. They did a bit where Jason Benetti, Bill Walton filled in on a White Sox broadcast.
Okay. I remember that.
As color analyst, working with Benetti on a baseball game. And it was so wonderful.
Just off the rails.
So gold, man. Like, absolutely incredible. Everything that you would want in that moment. So I think they were playing in Anaheim, so it was like out where he lives. And, it was just incredible stuff. All right, when we come back in, we will get a tidbit, we'll get tubular, and we will wind down for a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
What company makes your home more energy efficient, purifies your air, kills all viruses, and qualifies you for $6,000 in rebates? A.J. Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis at ajmichaels.com.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Discover one of Baltimore's hidden gems at Guilford Hall Brewery. Enjoy dinner in our spacious brew pub, sip a signature cocktail in our outdoor dog-friendly beer garden, or take a tour of our brewery. Discover your new favorite local craft beer. From crisp lagers to hoppy ales, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Pair your brew with delicious appetizers and entrees. There are options for the whole family, but you have to try our fan-favorite giant pretzel. Guilford Hall Brewery, where every sip is a celebration. Visit us online at guilfordhall.com.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Luke Jackson profiles Grayson Rodriguez, talking to people who have been part of his path as the Orioles hope he'll become their next homegrown ace. Also inside, we remember legendary Maryland basketball coach Lefty Drizel with stories from legends like Roy Williams and Bobby Cremins about what it was like to go up against the old left-hander. Press Box is available at over 500 locations around Baltimore, including 60 Royal Farm stores. You can also find the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
The Ed Block Courage Award Foundation has been working in partnership with the NFL for 46 years to support abused, neglected, and at-risk youth across the country, partnering each team with a children's facility or program that supports the well-being of those in need. Annually, one player from each team is selected by their peers to receive the Courage Award for their inspiration on and off the field. Learn more about how the Ed Block Courage Award Foundation makes a difference, and be sure to check out their latest podcast and web series episodes at edblock.org.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
Winding down for a Tuesday edition of the program. Let's get a tidbit. Tidbit is brought to you today by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com, who bring us County Sports Zone, of course. And if you missed anything from championship season in high school sports, get all the results, all the action. You can find it all right now. CountySports.zone, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. All right, what you got?
Angel Hernandez. We didn't love to talk about him. We didn't get to talk about him as much as I thought.
Ryan Ripken was very polite about it.
Yeah, very.
He was trying to do the political thing.
Well, I figured since this is a momentous
Man,
moment.
there's very few things that all baseball fans can agree upon.
Right.
It's
a huge thing. In a divisive era.
We was talking about Bill Walton, like how everybody kind of came together. Yeah, we can all come together and say it's a good day for baseball.
It's a good day for baseball. But Angel Hernandez ranked 57th on the all-time umpired games list. He umpired. He umpired over 3,600 baseball games.
About 3,599 too many.
Yeah, well,
I feel like after the first one, it could have been like.
Did you ever have Angel Hernandez as a guest on the show?
No, active umpires don't typically do.
I couldn't see that. Yeah, couldn't see that being the case.
There have been some umpires that I've gotten to know a little bit after their umpiring careers, but usually active umpires don't do interviews because you're supposed to. Somehow you're supposed to be above that. I'm not part of the game or whatever. It's weird.
Well. Joe West is first on that list, obviously, as you probably know.
Yeah, I probably would have guessed Joe West.
460 games umpired. But there is one other current person on this list. There are 88 umpires on this list of the all-time most umpired games. Can you name the current umpire that is on this list? He sits at number 48. He has umpired 3,501 games from 1989 until now. So it's been a long time that this guy has umpired these games, but he's a current MLB umpire.
Is it Laz Diaz?
It's not Laz Diaz. I don't know I don't think he made the list.
I feel like he's been around for a little while. Really?
Maybe. I don't know.
Current umpire. Wow.
I'll tell you this. I've heard the name.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been able to get this myself. But maybe you pay a little more attention to this.
It's so funny you say that because now I'm trying to think about the current. I don't know why.
You definitely know who he is.
I definitely know who he is. I'm trying to think about the current umpires and now maybe I just thought of Laz Diaz because the Orioles had him recently. I think he might have been the crew chief this weekend in Chicago, and that's the reason why I was thinking about Laz Diaz.
Can I give you an Orioles-related hint?
An Orioles-related hint? Sure.
Okay, so this guy was chosen as one of the
Lance Barksdale. Is it Lance Barksdale?
It's not Lance Barksdale.
No, okay.
He was chosen as one of the umpires for the Orioles-Rangers wildcard playoff game in 2012.
No, that's not going to help me. You think I'm going to remember the umpire? I remember Joe Saunders. That's a list of things I remember.
Thought I'd give you that. Yeah.
C.B. Buckner.
No, it is not C.B. Buckner. I don't think he made the list either, which surprises me.
I feel like he's been around for forever.
I know. I guess I got to look it up.
Really?
Maybe Wikipedia is wrong. Who knows?
Who else has been around for a long time? Who else has been? I'm just Dan Iasonia.
No.
Randazzo, isn't there? Tony Randazzo.
No.
Okay. Wish you would have done a top 5, so it wouldn't feel quite as stupid.
Well, if you
if I was getting some. Hunter Wendelstadt.
No.
Cousins? Is there a Cousins? Am I right about that? Was there an umpire named Cousins?
There's not an umpire.
Cuzzy? Is that what it is? Phil Cuzzy?
I know. Yeah, Phil, but no, not who he is. But that is a person. Yeah.
was all over it. All right, tell me.
It is Jerry Lane.
Jerry Lane. I do know that name.
I knew
Son
you'd
of a
know.
bitch.
Yeah,
I do know
I
that
knew
name.
you'd know.
I didn't know he had the most games umpired though. That's
well,
not something I
currently,
know.
yeah. And he actually, it's weird because Angel Hernandez has more on this list, but for some reason, they have Jerry Lane up at number 48 and Hernandez at 57. So Wikipedia maybe has some weird things going on, but regardless, they both make the list.
All right.
So, can you name number 2 by any chance?
For God's sakes! Did somebody have it named already?
Well, he retired in 1941, so it's unlikely.
No, 1941.
Bill Clem umpired 5,369
Is there another
baseball
modern
games.
name near the top?
The most modern, Tim Welke is up there.
Oh yeah, Tim Welke. What?
4,216 comes in at number 15.
What about because didn't Wendelstadt's dad, wasn't he an umpire too?
Yes, Harry
Wendelstadt.
Yes,
100%.
he's 8th on the list.
8th.
Yeah.
All right.
And I don't know where the other Wendelstadt is on the list, but I would.
I feel
check
like it
here.
actually and I don't know because somebody say no, Jerry Lane sucks, but I feel like it's actually a good thing for Jerry Lane.
Why is that?
That he's managed this many games, and I couldn't think because to me that means you've done your.
You've done a good job.
We really know
yeah.
umpires if they've pissed us off.
There's
right?
a couple that
we
also,
all know Joe West and we all know Angel Hernandez.
Yeah, that's
right.
Absolutely. Tom Hallion just retired a few years ago. He was on this list at number 54. Let's see. There was a couple
Tom
others.
Hallion doesn't sound familiar.
Ted Barrett recently retired.
I do know Ted Barrett.
He was on this list till 2021. So a few recent ones.
Okay.
Jim Joyce, another one.
Oh, Jim Joyce. Yeah,
pretty
I don't
recent.
know. I think Jim. He's not umpiring anymore.
2016, he retired.
Oh wow, Jesus! Where have I
been
been?
some time.
Look,
I don't pay that much attention to this. CB Buckner is probably the Angel Hernandez and CB Buckner are the names that resonate most with me when it comes to umpires.
And I know Dale Scott too.
Dale Scott. Yeah, there's a few guys that I could, but if I was asked this trivia question, I would not have gotten it.
Well, how about that? That was different. That was different. Yeah. I will give you that. That was different. Farewell, Angel Hernandez.
What else can we say?
A lot of great content.
What else can we say?
A lot of great content that was being done.
I was telling Glenn before the show, if you haven't seen the thread on Twitter that has about, 200 different Angel Hernandez moments of awful baseball calls. You should go find that.
It's a long video. I mean, it is
long videos. A lot of playoff ones, which are the more concerning ones. I guess as recent as last year, I think there were some that were egregious.
Some great content, like Angel Hernandez signs his retirement papers, and the signature is way outside.
The company LASIK tweeting out just something legendary. Yeah,
that's
good stuff.
That is really, really good. All right. Very good. Thank you for that. Tubular is going to be brought to you today by Sports and Social. Always the best place to watch all of the playoffs, all of the big events, every fight all year long, including that Mike. By the way, did I see that Mike Tyson had a health issue over the weekend? And now
I have no idea.
I don't care.
I wish I could help.
I have no interest in this thing at all. I have none, zero. But I thought I saw that Mike Tyson had an issue. He had a medical emergency while on a flight.
Interesting. Okay.
But he said he's fine. He just fell ill while he was
and he's fighting Jake Paul, is that correct?
I don't want to talk about it. It's so stupid. But you can watch it at Sports and Social. If that's what you're into, that's what you're into. Watch it at Sports and Social. Inside Live Casino and Hotel, just steps away from the FanDuel Sportsbook. The best place to watch all of the big events. An incredible atmosphere, the great giant media wall, all the delicious food and drinks at Sports and Social inside Live Casino and Hotel, Maryland. All right, here's what's coming up this evening. Totally Tubular. I mentioned it earlier. Grayson Rodriguez, Brian Bayo. That's a pretty good pitching matchup tonight for Orioles Red Sox just after 6:30 on Masson. Game 4 as the Mavericks try to close out and sweep the Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals, 8:30 on TNT and True TV. Rangers-Panthers Game 4 at 8 in the Eastern Conference Finals in the NHL on ESPN. French Open coverage continues on Tennis Channel. Right now, other baseball today, Masson 2 for Nationals Braves at 7:20. TBS Dodgers Mets 7 o'clock. Nice to see LA and New York getting a little national attention. They almost those markets are so overlooked.
Really
normally.
Underrepresented. Yeah.
You really appreciate TBS giving them a little bit of attention there. Speaking of which, Yankees Angels at 9:38 on ESPN Plus. MLB TV's free game of the day is Astros Mariners at 9:40. MLB Network is Phillies Giants at 10. WNBA tonight, Phoenix Mercury, Connecticut Sun at 7 on CBS Sports Network. NBA TV for the LA Sparks and Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark at 7 o'clock on NBA TV. USA Network for WWE NXT tonight at 8. Non-sports wise, the series finale of The Veil with our buddy Josh Charles is available on Hulu, so you can watch that. Zach, thank you, buddy. Great to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
Are you on social? Are you still tweeting at all?
I don't
about
tweet
the
too
Orioles?
much. I got to be honest. I don't tweet. I like a lot of tweets. I don't tweet too much by myself.
All right.
So.
All right. Well, still.
I feel like there's a lot of accounts that have that covered already.
Oh,
so.
they sure do, don't they?
They sure do.
I'd like to get out. I do much less.
I enjoy Paul Valley's Twitter.
Paul.
He has some strong opinions. It's great to see what he's putting out there.
Paul gets going.
He gets going. He really gets going.
The wild part too is that like I guess because he used to work on this show, I forget sometimes that Paul's my age. Like,
yeah,
not quite. Like he's almost my age. He's
okay.
like a year or two younger than me. And so then I'll do the bit where I'm like, he's a young guy full of piss and vinegar. I'm like, no, he's a dad. He's my age.
That's funny.
What are we doing here?
A lot of people have it covered, though. I mean, there's an account for everything. I feel like these days. I think when I started tweeting about the Orioles, there wasn't nearly. It was during the rebuild. There wasn't nearly this sort of coverage, and now there's it's covered. So
much.
I read it. I don't tweet it.
I don't blame you for that.
Yeah.
But it's Z
Goodman
20.
I think
Z Goodman
20. It might be.
Great.
It should just go with my age, right? Like now, it
just
should be like 23 now. Yeah.
I don't know how many Z Goodmans are there though. They might have claimed a few of them. Thank you for coming in and hanging out with us today. Really appreciate it. Also, thank you today to Len Elmore. Thanks also to Patrick Stevens and to Ryan Ripken. We'll get all that up in the greatest hits section of the. Do you know how to do it?
I'm not going to say archives anymore. That was a Kyle thing.
That was a Kyle thing. Now
I don't know the new
Griffin
one.
says, "Oh my God, it's so good." We were doing we had a sponsor that brought some food in.
So it's like
it's
an inside joke.
It's an inside joke.
Yeah,
We had a sponsor who brought some food in. Actually, I think it was Glory Days Grill that brought a dessert over. It might have been the butter cake, and Griffin took a bite and he was like, "Oh my God, it's so good." It's my favorite thing he's ever said on this show, so I use it all the time. We'll get him up there tomorrow. Yeah, Griffin's back, and I have no idea what we're doing on the show tomorrow. Couldn't tell you. I had to produce today, or book today. I got that taken care of. I'll let Griffin get back to figuring that out tomorrow. Thanks everybody at Pressbox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Visit Hagerstown in Washington County, A.J. Michaels, Guilford Hall Brewery, Royal Farms, the Ed Block Courage Awards, HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, Costas Inn, MSAA, Maryland Jockey Club, Glory Days Grill, the Baltimore Orioles, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Zach. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Tuesday night. Go